Huge news in the world of random deep cut, deep track football shit happening. The transfer record for a Faroese player has been broken. For the first time in history, somebody has spent 3.5 million euros to buy a player that was born and raised in the Faroe Islands. And that team is in Syria. Hellas Verona has purchased a Faroese player for 3.5 million euros. Now, this is obviously impressive, right? But most people don't really understand how impressive this is because there are a couple of things at play here that distort your understanding of how impressive this is. And while most people might not be an expert on this, I am. I've been to the Faroe Islands. I've made a video about the Faroese League champions before. It was the first real episode of Hidden Grounds that we ever did on the main YouTube channel, which is like our documentary series about cool football stories around the world. We went to the Faroe Islands for a week and just spent that week learning about the country, spending time in the country, studying how, learning from the people around the club how that team had made it all the way to the Conference League group stage from a city of 5,000 people. And to see, I could have told you after we made that video that this was going to happen. And I'm going to endeavor to explain to you how this sort of thing is happening and why it's so unbelievably impressive. Let's start with, everybody always loves populations, right? Let's just start with population. All right, there are a lot of microstates in Europe, right? You have Gibraltar, population's about 41,000. You have San Marino. Everybody always loves to talk about San Marino. Population's about 34,000. You have Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein's population is about 40,000. And you have Andorra. Andorra's population is actually significantly more than the Faroe Islands, with a population of about 89,000. Faroe Islands checks in right now with a population of 55,000, so a little bigger than that. Now, the Faroe Islands actually have something working against them, though. Where Liechtenstein, San Marino, Gibraltar are condensed, everybody's right there, particularly Gibraltar and other places I've actually visited in a footballing sense. You've got 3 or 4 fields there that everybody has the ability to play at, and all 41,000 people that live there are basically on top of each other. It's like Coruscant. It is one city, right, in just that one place. San Marino and Liechtenstein. I've been to Liechtenstein. I've not been to San Marino. Liechtenstein is essentially a mountainous valley, right? But everybody is, it's all still contiguous. And San Marino, I believe, is a mountain, basically. It's like a hill. I'm not entirely clear on that, but San Marino is just so small that it's maybe even in a different level. Faroe Islands is divided. It is split apart. There is an island, Suðuroy, the southern island of the Faroe Islands, you can't even drive to. You can only take a ferry to. And 6,000 of that population live down there. They still have 3 football clubs down there and a whole bunch of fields, and they still have players that come from there. But when we were covering this team, we're staying in the capital of Tórshavn and driving an hour each way every day to get to Klaksvík, where the club was. An hour. And we were driving through undersea tunnels to get there. It's a bunch of islands, hence Faroe Islands. So this population is 55,000 with one Burger King and a 1-story mall in Tórshavn where 25,000 people live. And then communities of anywhere from 500 to 5,000 people strewn around these different islands, but all of them have access to football pitches. All of them have access to football. So theoretically, if you were assessing advantages and disadvantages, and you add in the fact that compared to Liechtenstein, San Marino, Andorra, and Gibraltar, the Faroe Islands has horrible weather. The warmest it's ever been is 74 Fahrenheit, which you can look that up. It's cold as hell. It is unbelievably cold there and dark and windy. Okay, and it's not even just the temperature cold, it's the damp cold. If it's 30 Fahrenheit there, 0 Celsius there, it's incredibly humid, and it feels even colder than it actually is when you're there, right? I nearly froze to death when I went on a hike there. It was unbelievable. Okay, and they don't really have the infrastructure, the number of people or whatever to be able to build domes over their football pitches, so they build AstroTurf. They build the fake turf and they play on it or whatever. But every conceivable thing, from population size to distribution of the population to the weather, right, is conspiring against the Faroe Islands being able to produce or care about football at all. And yet, If you look at the Faroe Islands compared to every other European microstate, let's say European countries with a population of under 100,000, they're by far the best. In fact, they are better than a significant number of teams that have millions of people and have had footballers reach an incredibly high level before. I remind you, the World Cup qualifying in Europe. You might have already forgotten about this. The Faroe Islands put together an absolutely unbelievable performance where they nearly displaced the Czech Republic and Croatia. They finished ahead of Montenegro. Obviously, they finished ahead of Gibraltar. They finished with a positive goal difference. They had to play Croatia in the Czech Republic twice. They allowed 9 goals in 8 matches, right? Like, this was just an unbelievably impressive performance. They beat the Czech Republic late on in the qualifying. The Czech Republic, they went out on the field and beat them 2-1 with this population of 55,000 strewn all over these islands, right? It is unbelievable what they have managed to do with how limited their resources should be. It's like a huge high school. They all know each other. A lot of them live in these small communities, even if they're just kind of outside Tórshavn. It's this different community. I've forgotten the names of all of them. I was trying to think of one. I can't even think of it. Another reason this is so impressive is the Faroese national team itself is typically composed almost entirely of people that were actually born in the Faroe Islands. You will end up, particularly with Caribbean national teams, there is, and this, I don't blame national teams for using this, but a large diaspora. For example, Curacao makes the World Cup with a population of 140,000. Well, there's another 100 to 200,000 people of Curaçaoan descent that live in the Netherlands. Now, you add that all together, it's still smaller than Iceland. It's still crazy impressive that they made it, but there is that huge diaspora. There is a decent number of Faroese people in Denmark, but that number is under 100,000, and those people don't actually, like, the national team is composed primarily of players that are playing, that are born and raised in the Faroe Islands. That's just the way they've decided to do it. And honestly, the Faroese people that grow up in Denmark, because the Faroe Islands is a self-governing territory of Denmark, they usually represent Denmark. In that case, it's obviously up to the player, but it's not like there's a lot of Faroese descent guys that end up on the Danish national team, anyways. But why is this happening? So that's why it's so unbelievably impressive, because the geography and the weather and just an unbelievable lack of people that they've been able to. I mean, there's a play. This guy, again, Andreas Edmondson's the player. He's born and raised in Toftir. He grew up, he came up at Toftir, and that ramped him off into the Sunderland youth teams. Okay, Toftir is right here with a population of 1,000 people. This is the Faroe Islands, by the way. This is Suðuroy. This is the southern island that I did go to. Incredibly cool trip. Almost got seasick aggressively, then ate a bunch of like sheep and then came back and almost got seasick again. It was great. But this is where this guy's from. He's not even the only professional footballer in his family. His older brother, Johan Seaman Edmondson, has won 100 caps for the Faroe Islands, played for Armenia Bielefeld, AB, Viking. Right? He was signed initially after a trial with Newcastle United. Same family. And this is not the only family that's been involved with multiple professional footballers in the Faroe Islands. I don't think there's a country that is doing a better job of squeezing juice out of a stone than the Faroe Islands is. And the fact that they just got this transfer of the center back into into Serie A is the latest example that if you're a kid born into the Faroe Islands, your odds of being a professional footballer are probably higher than anywhere else in the world. But I mentioned it before. How are they doing this? Is somebody that's been there. It's a very simple process. Build a shitload of fields and make them free. There are so many football fields in the Faroe Islands. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And you want to know another great piece of that. Klaksvík, the community club that made it into the Europa League or into the Conference League group stage and drew Lille. Like Jonathan David was on that team. The club that is semi-professionals, that most of them were electricians that play from Klaksvík, drew Lille, just blew out Olympia Ljubljana, beat them 3-0 in Tórshavn because they can't play their matches in Klaksvík. They have to play at the National Stadium in Tórshavn. It's the only one that can host European matches. So everybody from Klaksvík drives down to Tórshavn, even though the stadium at Tórshavn is bigger than the entire town. Place was still pretty packed anyways, right? And they just flattened them. 3-0. blew out Olimpia Ljubljana, the champions at the time of Slovenia, just took them to school. That team got $4-5 million from that whole run and the wins they got in the Conference League group stage. Nearly got out of the group stage, would have been wild. They did not turn around and line their pockets with that. They did not turn around and go buy a bunch of expensive players with that. They turned around and invested the money in the infrastructure of the club. Better training facilities, hiring well-trained foreign coaches to move to Klaksvik to train the youth, to train the young players at the club in this community of 5,000 people. Like, the secret to success in the world of football is not hard to find. It's just most people don't have the guts to do it. And this transfer for a Faroese player is the latest example that on this little rocky outpost in the northeast Atlantic, they figured it out. They have absolutely figured it out. And they have multiple clubs that are making runs in the Conference League playoff every year now. It's not even just Klaksvik anymore. But Klaksvik now is in an unbelievable position because they've invested in their infrastructure. And it's not even just the footballing infrastructure. It's the handball, like it's the general like schooling conditions of the kids in the academy. It's all of that. They turned around and invested that money in the club because the board at the club are all volunteers. They're not even getting paid. It's crazy. It's like a foreign concept to most people, but it is so clear that that process is working. And congratulations to Andreas Edmondson, who's coming from top tier, B68 top tier, and played his way up. Went to Sunderland, right? Because, the Faroe Islands is showing a willingness to kind of export their players and market their players out. Same way that his older brother went to Newcastle. He goes to Sunderland, goes to the 4th division of Spain, spends 3 years there, goes to the Polish 3rd division, signs a deal with a team in the Polish 2nd division, plays really well. They get promoted to the 1st division, and then boom. 6 months later, Wisła Płock is selling him for 3.5 million euros to Hellas Verona, earning his way up. I'm not even kidding. If I was a Premier League club, I would have a scout swing through the youth academies of the Faroe Islands once every couple months, because there's a couple of these guys down here that are worth millions of euros that you can bring into your academy, and they're easy to get. These teams are more than happy to let them go because you talk to the people at Klaksvik, they're aware that that club's probably never going to be fully professional. And it almost doesn't even matter, right? Because there just isn't the population to support a fully professional league all the way through in a kind of healthy, sustainable way. So they work as electricians, they play, and they give themselves opportunities to do something like this. It is an unbelievable footballing story, and I feel like it could keep getting crazier because they're gaining ground.